Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner YouTube channel with me, Harry Symeou, trying my very best to keep you across all the latest Arsenal related transfer news. It feels like there's just so much going on in the background at the moment. We're kind of on edge all the time. We're sitting here on Twitter, scrolling through, refreshing those feeds, checking those WhatsApp groups, desperately waiting for something to happen with regards to further additions to Mikel Arteta's squad. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Raphinha, a player that Arsenal are being heavily linked with, and a player that we had it confirmed last night Arsenal have submitted an opening bid for. However, that bid has been rebuffed, rejected, and people are saying, and I've read a couple of reports, that Arsenal's opening bid was of around about £30 million, which you can understand why people feel that that's a bit of a derisory offer and the type of offer that could, quite frankly, irritate Leeds United and get their backs up a little bit going into those negotiations. Now, I said yesterday on my sort of reaction video to the news that Arsenal had made that bid for Raphinha that I wasn't massively fussed about the fact that we'd gone in with a slightly lower offer than what we know is probably going to be acceptable in Leeds' eyes, because I think that's the way you do business. You don't go and offer to pay top dollar straight away. You go in, you feel it out, you try and get a sense of what it's going to take to get the player away. You also want to be sending a message to the player, as I said yesterday, with regards to your intent around that signing. And I think that's genuinely common practice. I think, though, for Arsenal fans, as we said yesterday, we've been a little bit burnt by that. And so there is this panic that kicks in whenever we hear of something like this. But I was talking with Tom Canton earlier on today on the podcast about what is an acceptable amount of money to pay for Leeds United star Raphinha. What is an acceptable price for Arsenal to be kind of setting as their kind of internal limit? Now, obviously they're going to try and pay less. Obviously they're going to try and get the best deal possible. But what would you say is a fair amount? Now, let me know in the comments below what the maximum is that you would be okay with Arsenal paying for Raphinha. Now, there'll be some people out there that go, I don't give a shit what Arsenal pay. I don't care how much Arsenal have to lay out. I want this player. I think he'd be a good addition to the side. And that is that. So I'm not worried, I'm not fussed, and I'm not interested in what the actual price is going to be here. But we all know that football doesn't work like that. We know that business doesn't work like that. And we know that there comes a point in any negotiation where, as a club, as a purchasing club, as Arsenal want to be in this case, you have to just walk away and accept that there isn't any value in this for you. And, you know, it's not the right thing for you. So you kind of have to set, I believe, those kind of limits, at least internally. Now, you never give that impression off to the club that you're trying to purchase from, clearly, unless you get to that point, or you're starting to get towards that point where you're reaching your cutoff and you want to kind of play a little bit of chicken with them and sort of suggest that you're going to walk away and you're not interested. But you don't really want to sort of show your hand and show all your cards, particularly early on in negotiations. But I've been thinking long and hard about this. And I said earlier on that when talking to Tom, that I would be okay or happy to see Arsenal part with around about £50 million for Raphinha. I think that's fair. Okay, if they're going to push us to 55 million, maybe with some add-ons, okay, I can probably live with that too. But that's my personal limit for Raphinha. Now, I do think that he's a fantastic player. I think he'll add loads to the Arsenal squad. But given that he's going to want to play in a position that is currently occupied by Bukayo Saka, I'm not saying I don't want him, but I am saying that I don't know if it's worth spending such a significant portion of our transfer budget. That's my view on this. Now, I'd love the player to come in, and if this doesn't affect Arsenal in any other way, shape or form with regards to the other targets that they've set out, then I don't care if they spend £100 million on him. But not at the expense here of letting ourselves down in other areas that I believe to be, I'm not going to say more of a priority, because I think the wide positions are a priority. I think that, you know, you guys will have sat here on this channel and on this podcast over the last season and heard me say on numerous occasions that we need people who can produce the kind of outputs from those wide forward positions that Bukayo Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe, Gabby Martinelli, at their tender young ages, are just not able to provide at this minute. So I do think that Raphinha is a good option. He would give us what we need, and I do think that I know that we're gonna have to pay top dollar because we're signing him from a fellow Premier League club. But there is a part of me that wants to draw a line here somewhere with regards to what we should pay for Raphinha, because he's not the only wide forward out there. Don't get me wrong, I want him to come in. Please don't take this the wrong way. But once we start crossing over that 50, 55 million pound mark, I start to feel a little bit nauseous about it all. I've got to be honest. Leeds United have apparently, according to Fabrizio Romano, and I quote, been pretty clear with all the clubs interested in Raphinha that he can leave, but they want at least 65 million pounds. Now, I believe that 65 million pounds is too much. I don't believe that Raphinha is worth 65 million pounds. Some people were talking the other day about 65 million euros. Well, that's a different ballgame. Then you're talking at around about 58, 59 million pounds, which is closer to the amount that I feel would be acceptable. My maximum is around about 55 million in my personal opinion. There's not too much of a gap to bridge there. You're talking about 3-4 million pounds difference. 65 million pounds though feels a little bit over the top for me. I've got to be honest. Now, as I've said before, sometimes you have to go over the top. I think we went over the top when signing Ben White. And for those that are panicking about the fact that, you know, Arsenal have made a bid that is way below what Leeds are wanting, and that we know what Leeds are wanting, and that they've knocked it back, and that could potentially scupper the potential of this deal taking place later on, I would suggest you look back at the Ben White example, where we did have to bid 3, 4, maybe even 5 times, according to some reports, to get to the price point at which Brighton were happy to do business. So I'm not worried about us messing this up. I think that, you know, there is a tiny risk of that happening, but I think a lot of that thought process and a lot of that kind of mindset is based upon, as I said before, a bit of PTSD from what's happened in the past. 65 million though, it does feel a lot for me for Raphinha, but according to Fabrizio Romano, as I say, they have set their price. That is their price point. Now, I expect Arsenal to have to compromise with regards to what they're willing to pay. So I think they'll have to go a little bit over. Equally, though, given that the player clearly wants to move away, given that I believe Arsenal would have sounded this out with Raphinha himself before getting this far, I think that there'll be, you know, a number of parties here pushing from different sides trying to get this done. I think there'll have to be a bit of compromise on Leeds' part as well. Do we meet in the middle? You know, this is why this could be a deal that drags on for a little while. You know, I've seen people sort of waking up every day, announce this, announce that. It doesn't work like that in football. This could be, as David Ornstein described it earlier on, a long and difficult negotiation. Not just because it seems that at this moment in time, Arsenal's valuation and Leeds' valuation are quite different, but because we know that there is interest from a number of other clubs as well. Fabrizio Romano also tells us that Spurs have held direct talks with Leeds United over the potential signing of Raphinha, that Chelsea have contacted through Todd Boehly, the new owner and sporting director, and that Barcelona, who of course have a link with his agent, former Barcelona midfielder Deco, remember him, top player, he has carried over the same message to Barcelona from Leeds United. So £65 million seems to be the price point at which Leeds are willing to do business. Do I think they'll get that for him by the end of the window? No, I think they'll have to compromise somewhere along the line. But I think in terms of where we're at currently, we're going to have to compromise as well. We're going to have to stretch ourselves. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't negotiate, and I'm not saying that, you know, this isn't common. Like I've already said, it's common. You go in a little bit lower, you try and suss things out, and you gradually move up a little bit. They at some point will probably jump down a little bit just to make sure that you can meet each other in the middle, bridge that gap, because ultimately everybody wants to do this deal. Like Leeds United have a player on their hands that has made it clear enough that he wants to leave, that is looking to play European football next season, doesn't really fancy the risk of being in a relegation battle again. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to Leeds. I've been a big fan of them since they've come back into the Premier League. I think they've been a breath of fresh air. Really enjoyed watching them sort of go toe-to-toe with some of the Premier League's big boys, particularly in that first season where it was all Marcelo Bielsa ball. For me, it was superb. And it was a stark reminder to the likes of Burnley and various other clubs who have come up into the Premier League over the years and been very cautious and very boring and very functional, but not really ever wanted to evolve into something a little bit more adventurous and a little bit more exciting, I guess, that you can survive even when you try and play football. So Leeds United for me are a club that right now I've got a lot of admiration for. Thought it was a risk sacking Bielsa because I wasn't sure that the replacement Jesse Marsch would be able to keep them up. He just about did, and they're building for the future. They've taken a risk on him, but I think, you know, Raphinha has come to Leeds and he's served his purpose. He's had a couple. He's had a couple of really good seasons with the club, and for me, you know, it's time for him to move on. So going back to the point of this video, which is that Leeds United have been clear with all the clubs interested in Raphinha that he can leave, but for £65 million. I'm still interested in Arsenal doing the deal. It's still a deal I want us to do. He's still a player I'd very much welcome with open arms through the door. But I'm starting to get into that territory of me thinking, well, is this worth it now? If we're going to have to indeed go up to £65 million. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. Okay, don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new. We've had some incredible viewing numbers over the last few days, which is fantastic. Thank you all so much for your continued support. Please do hit the like button on the video. It really does help. Subscribe to the channel, as I say, if you're new. And if you'd like to go one further, become a member, join our Discord server, you can do so via the link in the description. I'll catch you all very soon with more. Until next time, goodbye.